Right, let's crack on then. So welcome to this masterclass today, how to get your managers to actually manage and save more than 8 hours every week from firefighting. So in this workshop, I'm going to show you how you can get your managers to the position where they're dealing with all the day-to-day issues in your business, where they're taking the initiative, they're thinking about the future, where they're planning ahead, where they're considering the commercial impact of the decisions that they're taking and the actions that they're actually choosing, and actually deliver you the results that you want. All of that meaning that you will save yourself at least a day a week of firefighting issues, because they'll be managing the operation effectively for you. And so I'll show you how to get your managers managing in the way that you want, because from what I've seen and experienced right now, there are loads and loads of CEOs and MDs who feel like their team are kind of a burden on them, and that they're always needing them, and that they're really not getting what it is that they need from their team. And what they really want is a team who are supporting them, who are in this with them, and who are reliable, so that when they say that they'll do something, that they go off and get it done, and a team that are really helping them to grow their business. But unfortunately, if you're here today, I'm going to assume that, like a lot of the people I speak to, that a lot of the time you're feeling like your staff are taking too much of your time, and that you're having to do things that they really should be taking care of for you. And they're all kind of wanting too much from you, relying on your input, needing your support, and actually all in slightly different ways too. So what I'm going to share with you today are some of the reasons for that, first of all, to get you thinking about what might apply to you and where you are with this right now. Because the first step here is really to get very clear on what the actual problem is, because often what we think is a problem isn't the problem at all. And then, most importantly, I'm going to go through what you can do about that, so that you start improving the results you get from your team, so that you see your teams progress in the way that you want them to, so that they do the right things, focus on the right work, and ultimately make the right decisions in your business. So they're being commercial, being proactive. So they're focused on those things either make you money or are important to have in place because you need them in order to be able to grow your business in a sustainable way. Now, to do that, I'm going to walk you through my Lead to Scale framework, and I use this with clients, and it focuses, as you'll see, on 3 essential areas. And once you implement this, it will get your managers managing. Now, these areas, as you can see, are leadership capability, leadership enablement, and leadership infrastructure. And by mastering these 3 areas, you will create a management team that delivers results without relying on you. So before I do that, look, I'm going to very quickly introduce myself. I hate long intros, so I'll just take a minute to share with you a couple of points about me, and I do that more than anything so that you know that what I'm sharing is actually worth your time today. So if we've not met before, I'm Leanne Bridges. I spent 30 years leading teams in both corporates and growing SMEs. And in the last 12 years specifically, I've been advising growing businesses on how to get the best results from their people and their teams. Now, I did that initially as a people and culture director in a niche gas business that was predominantly a chemical engineering and manufacturing focused business. And we grew that business and that team across Europe. And then for the last 5 years, I've been operating my own business, advising CEOs and MDs and senior stakeholders how to do the same. And you'll find over 50 recommendations for my work. So if you'd like to know more, then please do connect with me on LinkedIn, if we're not already connected there, and I share daily insights across the platform. To connect with me, just scan the QR code, type my name in, and when you connect, if you just make sure that you select the More button and then connect, so that we're actually connected, and that way then you can message me any questions that you get from today. Good stuff. Okay, so let's get into some of this then. I'm going to just check that everything's okay. Perfect. I can see you say that you can hear me. Lovely. Okay. So to move this on then, look, from all the businesses that I've worked with and I've spoken to over the last 5 years of doing this very specific type of work, I've noticed that there are 5 common obstacles preventing managers from actually managing, and why businesses are actually struggling right now to grow together. And instead the CEO or MD are feeling a bit like they're pulling teeth when it comes to getting results from their people. And as I run through these with you now, I just want you to think about like which of these are resonating, which apply to you. So if anybody is off multitasking, if I can just ask you for your full attention now so that we get the most out of the session, because what I really want you to do now is to identify the issues that you're spotting, those that apply to you as I go through them, so that when we go through what it is you can do about them to resolve them, that you can be considering the solutions in the context that you're seeing them in your actual business. So as I go through each one, just type the number into the chat of those managers that are sort of applying to you, and then put any sort of comments into the chat that are sort of striking you about that and how it's impacting your business. So here we go. So these are the 5 most common obstacles that I see preventing managers from actually managing. And the first one is that CEOs are finding that some of their team just aren't taking the initiative. They're not spotting what needs to be done, what issues need to be sorted, or thinking ahead enough to prevent problems and those things that are sort of like coming down the line without the CEO or MD having to step in. Now, that could be something operational, it could be a customer issue that's been dragging on, it could be a team problem that's been dragging on just far too long. And so leaving them firefighting all these issues instead of actually moving their business forward. And because their managers aren't being proactive enough, they're not asking other people or other teams to do what's required of them early enough. And so other people are inconvenienced and it's frustrating them too. And so then not only is the CEO or MD having to spend too much of their own time on this stuff, but it's also wasting other people's time, putting other people out. And then the MD finds himself fielding complaints because other people, other managers, team members haven't got the notice they need to get things done. And so, you know, this lack of initiative, it can really keep companies stagnant and stop them from growing. And I see very often them really struggling to keep up with current demand because like the business is just relying too heavily on either the MD or just too small a team of people. And, you know, my clients and the people I work with, they are all really smart people with great businesses, and they've often got a massive demand for their product or service, but they just can't quite go after it all because they're constantly held back because the team are struggling to grow with the business. So that's the first one. Let me know, do you find your team not taking enough initiative or thinking ahead without you having to prompt them? Type number 1 into the chat if that's coming up for you, and then we'll move on into the second one. So number 2 is this. So even though they're holding management team meetings, excuse me, or like one-to-one meetings, the team aren't following through with all the actions that they're committing to. And these meetings can sometimes feel like a bit of a talking shop where they're going around the houses. Excuse me, I'm going to have a drink of water a minute. Right, eventually, so they go around the houses and they'll eventually get into like an action to take. But then after the meeting, people just don't follow up on what they committed to do. And the CEO or MD can be like certain that they've had an agreement about what would happen and the action that would be taken. But then they get to the next meeting and then like not enough progress has been made, or if people have made progress, maybe they've gone off at a bit of a tangent. And these team members, they're all really smart and experienced people. They seem like the right people. And some of them have done this level of job before, so they should actually know how to do this stuff. And some of the others, they've been with the companies a long time and they've grown with the business and they've been promoted internally and they're being paid a high salary, but they're not just going off and finding out what needs to be done to get things done. And so my clients will quite often say to me, like, nobody showed me how to do like every last little thing, yet it seems like they're having to do this like disproportionate amount of chasing things, guiding people, cajoling people. So let me know, you know, do you find your team just aren't following through on actions that you're sure that you agreed that they would do? So type number 2 into the chat if that's something that comes up for you. And then number 3 is this, that some of the team members are falling a bit short. And even though the CEO or the MD has had conversations about what needs to be happening instead and the results they want, they continue to fall short on some of the things. Or if they do make changes, then it's a bit short-lived. And the problem as well is that some of these people are really key people in their business. They might have been with them a long time, they respect them, they're certain that they should be able to do these things like in the way that they need to be done, and they keep sounding like they know what they're doing, but unfortunately they just don't seem to change. And so they leave the one-to-one meeting and they go back to doing the same old things, and then the MDs are having to chase it up again like 30 days later. So let me know if you've got managers in your team who are falling just a bit short, who don't seem to make the changes, quite make the changes that you're asking for despite having had conversations with them. So type number 3 into the chat if that's coming up for you. Good, I can see some of you resonating with some of this. Okay, great. Okay, so number 4 then And this kind of sums all of this up, and I want you to let me know whether this resonates for you. And this really does tie everything together, and I see this really often. It's like the most common and actually the most important point. And it's that both the team and the business lacks a well-defined leadership approach and framework that enables a team to perform and deliver without this need for oversight. And without this structure and an effective leadership approach for dealing with people and situations, managers aren't stepping up. And so the CEO or MD is being forced into all the detail and constantly being pulled into things that really should be running smoothly, because they haven't got a clear and repeatable way to keep the team and operation on track. And it's without this in place, the burden of accountability just keeps falling back on them. So they're left with the responsibility of following up on tasks, checking things get done, holding people to commitments, making me feel tired saying it. Even though these responsibilities, they should be sitting with the managers. And so this lack of an effective way of approach to accountability means that accountability isn't being shared or enforced across the team. So the MD is having to chase things up, address issues, deal with problems that just should have been handled, which is added into their workload, pulls them away from strategic tasks like growing the business, and it really limits their ability to do the business development piece that lots of my clients want to be doing. And so the good news is that I'm actually here to share that framework with you today, the framework and the leadership approach using the model that I just shared on that last slide with those 3 pillars: capability, enablement, and infrastructure, because in all my experience, it's this framework and implementing the pillars in it that gets managers actually managing. So that's number 4. So let me know into the chat whether for you think that there's not sort of a clear enough and repeatable enough way to hold people accountable so that you're seeing them deliver results like day after day, week after week, month after month. And then the final thing that I see time and again is that businesses are kind of just, I don't know, really hoping that things will get better. Of course, that's what we all do, is hope things will get better. But because they're doing that because they're so busy operationally, and they just can't give this the time and attention that it needs. And the thing is, well, you'll know this, there is just so much investment in people and paying all these salaries. And when you think about it, that is just such a huge cost. But understandably, businesses are hoping in time things will improve. And I just hear this all the time, thinking that when someone's been there another 6 months, I think it will fall into place. Maybe it'll just sort of work itself out a bit better, or actually maybe when I hire the next person, that will make everything easier, or maybe I just need to put in a few more hours and that will get us over the hump. But unfortunately, it just doesn't get any easier without focus. It just doesn't. And what they find is it just goes on getting more complicated. The longer they've left it, the more they've grown, until they make a decision to resolve these issues. They've never got their team performing to the levels that they should have been, and they've never got the business growing at the rate they wanted, because the team just isn't delivering in the way that they need them to. So I can see that you've been typing into the chat. So let me know, does that resonate for you? Do you sort of hope that in time things will just get better when that next thing happens? What resonates most for you? And then we'll move into some of the solutions. Okay, good. Okay, so whichever one of those resonates for you, then we're going to go through now the steps to take and the process and the approach that will get you better results from your team. So, as I've already alluded to, there are 3 parts to this: leadership capability, leadership enablement, leadership infrastructure. So I'm going to get into the detail now. So part 1 is this: leadership capability. So the focus here is on building a management team that can truly lead. They can take ownership, they can step up, they can guide their team without you needing to be getting involved. And if you're like the CEOs and MDs I work with, you've probably got a talented management team, people who know your business inside and out, but somehow you're always in the thick of it yourself, managing issues that really shouldn't be on your plate. And so then it just leaves you, if you're like them, wondering why ever is this happening? They've got experience, they know their functional areas, but the minute there's sort of something that's challenging, it's landing back with you and they're not stepping up to lead in the way that you need them to. Now, the reality here is that there is a gap in leadership capability, because being good at the job, and you'll know this, being good at the job doesn't automatically make someone a good leader of people. So it's not about just knowing their functional area. They need to know how to lead other people effectively. And that's where they struggle, because leading people is just, so different from the technical side of the job. you know, they need something more here as well than advice on what to do and sort of tasks handed down to them. What they actually need is the skill to lead. So in my full programme, I go through 16 essential leadership skills that I know from years of experience and research are the key to creating high-performing teams that drive like consistent business results and growth. And here's the thing, that most managers don't need a complete overhaul. It's often just about making small but meaningful shifts across a couple of areas. And that is what ends up making a massive difference. A subtle shifts allows them to step up into their leadership role. Now, I can't go through all 16 today, but I will share with you 3 of them, 3 that are the most common skills that tend to be missing. So if you notice any of these skills are missing in your team, then addressing these will be a massive game changer for you. So, you know, if you spot any of these, and by focusing on those, you will really start to change things. So the first one is delegating clearly and effectively. Now, this may seem straightforward, but bear with me, because it's actually often not as straightforward as people think. And if you've noticed that tasks aren't getting completed on time or results are falling a bit short from your manager's team, one of the common reasons is the way that the delegation is happening between them and the team members. So your managers might be asking for work to be done, but they're not delivering it to the standard or the deadline that's needed. And the reason is rarely because your managers are incapable. It's that they haven't learned how to delegate effectively themselves. They just struggle with setting clear expectations, setting out exactly what's needed, or setting deadlines in the right way. And I had this recently with a manager who worked for a client of mine, and his team was really basic. His team weren't processing orders in the right time frame. That was it. And after digging into it, it boiled down to the fact that they weren't having it delegated to them in the right way, and it wasn't being monitored effectively. You know, the deadlines weren't clear enough, the process wasn't clear enough between team members, and the manager just wasn't putting enough focus into what his team was actually doing. Now, the MD naturally assumed that the team manager would have done that, but he hadn't. And when we dug into what was going on, this was the problem. And once we worked on delegation skills with him, the change for this was immediate, because, you know, it's just so common to assume that managers are doing something that seems really, really obvious to you. But so often they're not. And with this particular situation, having done this, it actually meant he didn't go on and hire another person, because he'd thought, obviously, that they were under-resourced in that team. And I have to tell you, I was only actually speaking to someone about this yesterday, and I just see it all the time, like teams that think that they've not got enough people, but so often that's not the real issue. It's a leadership skills gap and a lack of taking the right actions in the team. So yes, everybody is busy, but they're not effective. Okay, so that's the problem. They're busy, but sometimes just not effective. So that's delegation, and as much as I can cover on that right now. So having covered that, the second skills gap that I see really often, and I'm sure that you'll resonate with this, I just see this everywhere, is that managers don't really like to address performance issues. They'll quite often avoid them, whether it's underperformance, missed deadlines, behaviour that maybe is just like dragging the rest of the team down. Managers feel uncomfortable dealing with it or unsure of how they should approach it constructively. But when performance issues are ignored, you know this, they will fester, they'll grow, and they lead to more underperformance and discontentment in the team, and potentially causing your better performers either to leave because they get a bit sick of it, or to start to take the view about, like, well, why should I bother? You know, if they're not doing it, why am I going to do it? And that starts to spiral into this moaning and this culture of like negativity sort of running under the surface. So to lead effectively, your managers need the skill to be able to address these challenges head on in a way that keeps everybody on track. Now, when these conversations are handled really well, they don't just solve immediate problems, they create a culture where everybody knows what's expected of them, they're accountable, they feel motivated, and it keeps a team like really positive and productive. And so then on that note, the third area is this. It's about motivating the team so that they get the best out of them. Now, you know that leadership isn't just about allocating tasks and getting them done. It's about creating an environment, isn't it, where people are motivated, where they feel energized, where they want to go the extra mile for you. And so if you've noticed your teams sort of like going through the motions a bit, or maybe whispers of discontentment, it's often a reflection of the leadership that they're receiving. Perhaps the manager's being like overly critical or coming across as a bit aggressive, or just isn't able to inspire people. And people need to feel valued. Like, we all like to feel valued, don't we? Like, we're an important cog in the wheel, not just a number, and to know that our work is really mattering. And the thing is, many technically strong managers lack that natural ability. They just don't have that natural way of inspiring and engaging people. And when that's the case, even the most capable leaders are only going to reach a fraction of their potential as a leader. And their team won't ever get the results that they could if only they were just a bit more motivated. So you might be wondering, having gone through this, well, how do we do that then? How do we as CEOs or MDs develop this capability in our team? And I'm going to walk you through an example of how one of my clients made the shift, how he built the capability of his finance director. So he was actually managing and leading his team. So my client had an FD who was technically very capable, but he was struggling with the people side of the role. Very often the case, and the MD therefore found himself always pulled back in to sort out like these little problems, issues that really shouldn't have kept coming back to him. Stuff like, invoices not having been paid, or teams requesting reports that they're just not getting, and it's just all taking too long. And these sorts of things are actually causing little problems everywhere, all across the business. And it wasn't that the FD was incapable, it was that he lacked the skills to lead his team to get it done. Now, he'd already done courses on time management, and he'd done some like generic management courses. But on these sort of courses, people just hear theories when in fact they need to be able to do this stuff. They need to be able to actually lead. So with him, we use this 16-point framework that I just was speaking about to identify the gaps in his leadership capability. And when we got into it, he struggled to delegate properly, he avoided addressing underperformance, and he wasn't motivating his team to give their best. He just hadn't put enough importance on it. So we worked through how to delegate in a way that left no ambiguity, so that his team knew exactly what was required. We got him confident having those conversations about performance, those conversations that he previously felt like they were tough or difficult, so that he was dealing with performance directly and effectively. And we helped him find ways to inspire his team, to bring them together so that they all felt like they were important. They were an important part of that team and the success of the finance function. Now, over a few weeks, things really started to shift. And the FD started to take ownership, started to set clearer expectations, and was leading his team in a much more confident way. Now, the MD had actually been on the verge of replacing that FD. Because he just didn't think that he was going to make it, but with the right type of support, he turned into a much stronger leader. And so instead of having to constantly chase him up to get things done, the MD could step back, knowing that the finance team was actually in good hands and everything was fine. So to pull this first pillar together, to rectify these gaps in leadership capability, it's about getting under the skin of like the real problem and solving that. And when that happens, you'll then not just have like a competent technical leader, but you'll have someone who can really lead the team. They're a stronger leader of people. So if you're recognising some of these challenges and you're wondering which of the 16 essential leadership skills might be causing the problem in your team, then I will be offering some free audit calls at the end of the session. Now, on the call, there will be the opportunity for us to explore what's holding your managers back from effectively stepping up, so that you can address those gaps in a targeted way and stop them relying on you every step of the way. So there's a QR code here that you can scan, or there's a link there that you can type in, because I've helped so many clients and their teams evolve as leaders and get better results. And you'll see, like I've said, there are quite a lot of testimonials across different platforms where I've done this successfully with other businesses, and I can absolutely do this effectively with you too. So I've got that QR code and the link on some of the slides as we go forward, in case I've not given you enough time when you want a call. But if you want one, then I've only got 10 slots available, so just grab yourself one when you know that you want one. But I want us to move on now. So second pillar is this: leadership enablement. So you've built the company this far. You've led your team, I am sure, through endless challenges, solved countless problems. You kept everything moving forward, and that's what's got you the success you've got now. But as the business continues to grow, in my experience, what's required from leadership changes, because you know the saying, like, what got you here doesn't get you there. And so as you're moving forward, it's clearly not about being in the details and handling all the issues. You know this. Instead, it's about steering the ship, setting the direction, and making sure everyone else is dealing with the issues that come up. It's about shifting your focus to where you can have the most impact, so that you create an environment where other people solve problems, solve them almost as if it's like you solving them yourself, but they're doing that for themselves. And it's about letting go of some of the operational tasks that come your way so that you can concentrate on moving the business forward, setting the strategy, driving the growth, and then mentoring your team. And the thing is, your time is one of the most valuable resources in the business. We all know how quickly your time can be taken now, how quickly your diary can get filled up with day-to-day things that just keep coming up. And it's natural, isn't it? You know, urgent problems come up and suddenly your day is absolutely packed with tasks that really somebody else should be doing. Now, the key to leading through this phase is about deliberately and intentionally getting your managers to manage so you can do the strategic work. Now, in my experience, for all the work I've done, one of the hardest shifts to make is getting your managers to manage and making the move from being in control to managing through managers. And that's because some of the foundation pieces aren't there. Now, when you combine all the three actions I'm sharing today, so capability, enablement, infrastructure, that's what you need to let go to get your managers managing and comfortable taking a step back operationally, knowing that things aren't just going to fall apart. That's about, you know, stepping into a new kind of leadership where you move from control to enablement, from firefighting to future building. You know, you become the leader that your business needs right now, and your team needs to become like the kind of effective, cohesive group that can drive the company forward with independence and with confidence. So I'm going to share with you how to do this by walking you through how I've done this with clients. So the client I'm going to talk about runs a manufacturing business, and he's got fantastic results by making some small shifts in the way that he leads. Now, if you met him, I think you would think as well, he's already just such a great leader in so many ways. His team love working for him. He's created this really supportive, positive environment. But despite all of that, he found himself frustratingly still in all the operational issues. Now, and these were issues like really that his manager should be handling. And, you know, some of the managers weren't following through on tasks that he needed them to do, or they weren't holding their teams accountable enough. And it was just starting to slow the business progress. And also he'd himself been avoiding like a few tough conversations that he knew needed to happen. And despite the team liking working for him, he often heard moaning about other people or problems. And he just couldn't understand what this was all about, because it's such a nice place to work. So by working together, he came to see that actually he needed to shift his leadership approach, and he needed to work on leadership enablement. And so we took a closer way at the way that he was leading his team, what was working well and what was holding the team back. And we focused on identifying what it was that he was doing that was either a multiplier, so those ways that he was behaving that helped the team get results, and what it was that was a diminisher, so the things that were unintentionally limiting his team's performance. Now, one of the biggest multipliers, I'm sure you probably see this as I'm talking about it, was his supportive nature. You know, he created an environment where people felt comfortable, valued, and it was it is a fantastic foundation. But there were also diminishing habits like avoiding tough conversations or not setting clear enough expectations. And these behaviours, though they were completely unintentional, were just preventing the team from stepping up and delivering what was needed. Now, once we worked on practical ways to modify his leadership approach to make sure his supportive style also drove accountability, things really changed. And one of the key changes was learning to set expectations in a way where the team also realised they were accountable too, and got them delivering the right results on time. And the thing is, he actually thought that he was already doing it. but he just wasn't doing it effectively. And he said to me, you know, I know what to do and I'm doing it, but the problem is that he just wasn't doing it in a way that worked. So I helped him to shift that. So he was setting expectations and people knew that they were accountable, which meant they reliably did what they said that they would. And then another critical area we worked on was tackling tough conversations. You know, those things that he'd been really avoiding dealing with. You know, he was skirting around the issues because he felt like it was really uncomfortable. So I helped him become comfortable and confident with having those conversations. And we broke down the conversations into what needed to be said. And then we practiced framing it so that it felt constructive and helpful rather than confrontational, so that the feedback landed really well, as well as setting out like clearly what needed to be delivered or to change. And we got him doing that without undermining that great positive environment that he built. The thing is, like CEOs and MDs, they'll often say to me that they avoid some of these conversations because they don't really want to upset things too much, or because the team is kind of partly performing, so they don't want to risk making another problem for themselves. But the thing is, it just hasn't got to be like that. You can have these conversations and they can be really constructive and really well received. Just about understanding how to have the conversation. And the thing is, most CEOs or MDs have kind of learned this stuff by maybe reading books or articles or looking at processes about, you know, theories, or they might have even gone on a course and run through some processes. But the thing is, those ways of learning it are kind of a bit like learning to swim by reading a book or reading a process. You know, a book or a process just doesn't give you the skill to actually go and get in the water and swim. And that's the issue here, that they needed to understand people and behaviours and how to deliver it to get it to land with the team. So going back to this client anyway, after doing that work on his own leadership style and making it more enabling, the team started delivering more consistently. They were thinking about what was coming down the line without needing prompting. And they knew what was expected and felt empowered to meet those expectations. And it got his team really delivering, while still maintaining a supportive culture that he really valued. Now, again, it wasn't about a complete overhaul. This is about making its nuances. It's about small, powerful shifts that transform the way that his managers performed. And by modifying his approach, he didn't just drive accountability and ownership in the management team, he also was actually role modelling effective leadership then, which started to create a ripple effect. And so the team, his management team, started to see how to step up as a leader, how to lead with clarity and conviction, and how to tackle challenges head on, because, you know, at the end of the day, they are mainly copying the way that we lead them and learning from us. And so this shift has given him just so much more time back to work on business growth and leave like so many of those operational headaches behind. And it's this kind of deliberate change to your leadership approach that will move you from being in the day-to-day operational issues to really driving the business forward, creating a team that just doesn't depend on you, but it actually operates independently and confidently, and it helps your business grow. So that's leadership enablement, the second pillar. So let's move into part 3 then, which is leadership infrastructure. So leadership infrastructure, this is about systems, structures and processes that create the foundation for your team to perform like at their very best. And most CEOs believe that they have got this in place. But the reality is, that I find anyway, is that more often than not, it's only really partially built. So it doesn't quite work, or it's not fully effective. And without the full infrastructure, the business will struggle to grow smoothly, because there isn't a solid foundation and a mechanism that everybody's operating from. And this leadership infrastructure, it isn't about having a business plan or holding team meetings, although those do need to happen. But it is about building the underlying systems that allow every part of the organisation to work in sync. Now, you know, this isn't hundreds and hundreds of processes. Again, it's about some strategic processes, systems and ways of operating that will get your business functioning, the team accountable. It's strategic alignment, it's having some communication rhythms, it's having clear accountability structures, and it's about having the right culture that makes sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction, working on the same things without this constant oversight from you. And that's why, even though many CEOs think that they've got the right infrastructure, they're still finding their managers are working at cross purposes, projects get stuck or teams are clashing over who's responsible for what, it's because priorities aren't fully aligned and streamlined. And, you know, it's easy, it really is so easy, I've been there myself, to just think that people know what's expected. You just kind of assume because it seems really obvious. And you may have even discussed it too, but without this concrete infrastructure supporting it, then, you know, like a consistent way to align, to communicate, to hold each other accountable, things just get lost and you end up in the weeds sorting out the stuff that fell between the cracks. Now, to share how this works in practice, there's a client of mine, he's the MD of a manufacturing and engineering business, and he faced this exact problem. And he was convinced that his management team was aligned with the business strategy, but the reality was very different. And when we dug a little deeper, he found that each manager had a bit of a different interpretation of what result he wanted. They were all working really hard, but their efforts were scattered. And really, some of them were in the wrong places because they didn't have this unified clarity about where the business was headed and what the top priorities were, and there was confusion. And the result of that was that there was frustration across the team. There was some misunderstandings. There's loads of wasted time talking about things that weren't working, which I know he used to find it frustrating himself. You know, because if things aren't working, let's get them sorted. Anyway, just as an example of the sorts of things that were going on, so they had loads of pressing staff issues to resolve, like getting their teams to deliver their responsibilities and their objectives. But one director was working on a staff engagement app. Now, normally, I'd be so supportive of that because I love making sure teams are engaged, but the business just wasn't ready for that. It wasn't the right thing to be doing at that time. You know, they didn't have the right infrastructure or foundations in place to even be doing that right then. It was almost like putting the roof on a house before you've actually built it. So he's just working on the wrong things. And also people in the business were missing things because they didn't know what other people were doing, and people were treading on each other's toes, and there was some hidden conflict and friction and sort of tensions running under the surface. And when you see this happening, like little squabbles, passive aggressive comments, those are the things that make you realise that this is like quietly simmering under the surface. So to deal with this, that we used my strategic alignment process, which brought everyone together, pulling in the same direction. We got the strategy and the organisation culture to a point where it was understood and people could see what they needed to do and how they needed to do it. And once we had everyone aligned, then we worked on the communication flows to ensure the alignment wasn't just a one-off process that got forgotten. And so that just includes simple processes that keep priorities clear and relevant, so that as things change, everyone knows what's going on. And if there's a setback or an adjustment needed, that the team can actually decide between themselves and action them, and not keep escalating everything back to the MD for a decision. And most importantly, like, everyone understood as well how to behave. Because I'm sure you relate with this if you're like lots of people I speak to. It's not just about what we're doing, it's about the way that we're going about it too. And then finally, we built some accountability systems. So instead of the MD having to check in constantly, he knew at a glance where his teams were, and it gave him the confidence to step back and trust the team was actually delivering. And as a result, instead of the MD running around trying to fix things, the team are working closely together. There's cohesion in the team. Each manager is clear on their role, what's expected, and how their work contributes to the broader goals. Tasks aren't getting missed or duplicated, and everyone has got a sense of ownership. And the MD now has more time. He says he's actually got back more than a day a week that he now uses to focus on growth. And it wasn't about massive change. We infilled existing practices with some simple processes that completed the infrastructure. It meant everyone was aligned, communication was clear, accountability was embedded in daily operations, and it's those small shifts that really make the difference. And having done that, the business is growing much more smoothly now. The team are remotivated, and the MD can really focus on growing the business. And I did this in another business, and in that business, one of the changes we made resulted in a 350-hour staff time saving. So 2.5 full-timers per month. It's a fairly large SME, but from just one action in getting that framework right. And the reason was because too many people were involved in too many things. And right now for that business, they're just investing that time into business growth now, instead of wasting all that time and money. So that's leadership infrastructure. So As we start to draw to the end of the session, if there's one thing I would love for you to take away today, it's getting your managers to manage is actually about having the right skills, the right environment and the right infrastructure. And it's easy to assume that these gaps are going to close themselves. I've done it myself, that with time, the team will naturally figure out. But what I've seen and experienced time and again is that real lasting change requires some deliberate focus and the right kind of support. Now, the truth is, most CEOs and MDs I work with have already done the really hard part. They've built the business, it's successful, they've hired a good team, and they have navigated loads of challenges, dealt with all the problems. But getting your team to step up to truly lead and to free you from daily firefighting isn't something that will happen without intention. It's about understanding the subtle shifts that need to be made and how to put them into action in a way that works for your business. So, for those of you now who are sat here thinking that you would be keen to get this done, I'd like to introduce an opportunity for you that will help you implement these changes really quickly, effectively and efficiently. It won't be for everybody. It will only be for those people sat here thinking, yep, I want to fix those things in my company now with my team so that I can grow my business and not be hamstringed by these issues moving forward anymore. It's for those people wanting to take action. If you don't want to take action, definitely isn't for you. But if you are sat there wondering how you can get this working for you, if you're looking to build a team of managers who actually manage and grow the business, then the opportunity is this. It's my Business Accelerator program. It's a program that helps you to develop a high-performing team so that you've got the platform and capability that you need so that you can grow your business. In the Business Accelerator program, we'll work together across 3 core pillars like those I've just been talking to you about. So the first one is leadership infrastructure. So the leadership infrastructure is about systems that enable high performance and growth. So there are 5 core aspects to this. There's quite a bit in it, but there are 5 core things. So the first is about creating a strategic snapshot. So together we create clear goals and priorities that everybody understands, that are simple and straightforward, and people actually act on so that they can hit their targets in a repeatable way year after year. The second thing we do is put in place an accountability framework, which turns goals into daily actions, so your team consistently delivers results without this constant overseeing. The third is that we put in place a communication rhythm, which just keeps everybody aligned and makes sure that the team know what's going on and that they don't have to keep coming back to you for decisions, because they understand where they're at with things and where their responsibilities within that's lying. The fourth is cultural momentum. So we build on the culture you've already created and ensure that it's got every element it needs so that your workplace is positive, customer-centric and high-performing. And then the fifth thing we do is implement a scalability blueprint. So we put in place simple systems and structures so that as you grow your business, you've everything you need in place to grow it in a sustainable and much easier way. And someone was saying to me, oh, I suppose as the business grows, you have to keep doing the work. No, you don't ever have to redo this work, because you will start to build up your organisation and systems in such a way that it continues to grow no matter how big you grow. So this is a one-off piece of work that you'll be doing and evolving over the longer term. Then not be the point of having to go back and redo it all. The second piece is leadership enablement. This is about empowering your team to deliver and freeing up your own time. And there are 3 aspects to this in essence. The first is leadership skills mastery. So in that part of the programme, we'd be identifying your leadership multipliers and diminishers, like I talked about before, so that we make sure that you're using your strength but closing any gaps in your own leadership toolkit and skill set so that you're effectively leading in every situation. Now, I can cover all the people skills that you'll need in that section, but most importantly, we'll only be working on the skills that you need to close the gaps that you've got, to round off your skill set, so that we make the most of our time together, because people I work with are busy. I don't want to waste time on activities that I so often see in other programs. I just use like fillers, so that won't be happening. We'll be working on specifically what it is you need, and we'll be honing those skills. And the type of issues will vary person to person, but really regularly, with nearly everybody I cover, how to have performance conversations with senior managers so that they land and are getting the results they need through their people. And it might be how to deal effectively with managers who can't let go and want to hold on to everything, and then they're just like overwhelmed with work and can't make any progress. Or it might be how to deal with managers who maybe aren't putting enough focus on people management and actually getting the result through their team. So whatever it is that's getting in the way of leading your team, then we will deal with that together so that you get results through your management team and your people. The second thing we cover is behavioural intelligence. So this is where I just help you to understand in a really simple way human behaviour and emotional responses so that you can confidently manage difficult situations, anything from anger to tears and everything in between, so that you lead with calm, control and empathy, so that you keep the team focused, productive and they get the job done. And so often, you know, in situations, CEOs, MDs, people get derailed because they just can't understand why their team do or say certain things. It just doesn't make sense. So in this section, I'm giving you the information that will help you understand why people are behaving like they are, so that you can manage it in a much more straightforward way, rather than being derailed by like their emotional responses. And then the third part of this is CEO performance optimization. So this is about overcoming limiting thoughts, worries, stresses, you know, or even like feeling confident in certain situations where now you might feel a bit uncomfortable. You know, I've had people say to me, oh, you know, I get butterflies when I'm out doing business development presentations, or like whatever. There are odd things for people that they really want to get rid of and deal with. And we do this to strengthen your mental resilience, to make things easier and make sure that you're not losing time to distraction, like overthinking things or playing conversations out in your head over and over again, because those things are just so energy and time draining. I'm sure you know that already. And then the third thing that we'll be doing, the third part of the programme, is leadership capability. So in this part, we will be developing your team so that they consistently deliver results. Now, three core parts to this. Skills gap diagnosis are first. So we identify the key skills each leader needs to improve to uncover the root cause of performance issues using a simple targeted checklist. It did take me years to refine though, because I work with some of the world's leading leadership skills organisations, and I basically distilled all of that into 16 straightforward points. But these are the skills that I know get high performance. And what that will mean is that you and your team can quickly identify the gaps and just work on them to close those gaps. And then that's followed by a leadership toolkit. So you'll get tailored advice and guidance on how to address those gaps with your team. And you'll have a repeatable process you can use time and again, so that as your business grows, you know what to do with anybody else that comes up with this issue with you. And what that means is that you're not relying on some sort of external leadership training to sort out issues, which actually is a very long play. If you've done any leadership training, you'll know what I mean. And it relies on your team understanding the training and then coming back and implementing it. And this programme isn't about long plays. This is about actually closing gaps now, quickly and effectively. So I'll give you the toolkit that you need to simply address some of those things with your team. And then the third is about capacity for growth. So this is about how do you attract, retain and develop the right people in your business, have a succession plan for the future, to make sure that you've got the capacity that you need to grow your business. Because as you know, your business can actually only really grow to the extent of the people that you have in it to deliver. So that's the programme. Now there are four key components, sort of like the way it's delivered is this. So there's some coaching and mentoring. So there's 2 1.5-hour sessions each month to develop your skills and help you implement the tools that you'll learn, along with like tailored support through that. And this is all really bespoke to you and where you are in your business right now. So we don't spend hours, as I said, doing things that aren't necessary. We look at exactly what's happening and which bits of the programme to apply where that makes the most sense for you. Then you get toolkits and frameworks. So I just give you the toolkits, frameworks, processes, checklists that are simple and guaranteed way to implement changes and achieve results quickly. They are literally, most of them, lift and drop. There's some gaps to fill in some of them, but but I had a client the other day working on one of them, and he copy and paste, infilled a few things, and it was done. And some of those took me hours to develop, years to actually learn and get right for implementation, and you just get given those. Then there's a WhatsApp channel for ongoing support. So there's a direct line between you and I, so you can ask any quick questions for support and make sure that you make progress quickly, and make sure that you keep momentum between sessions. So if you get stuck on something, you can drop me a WhatsApp and we can get that resolved. And then the fourth part is accountability. So this is about accountability that will help you stay on track, implement changes, and make consistent progress towards your goals. Now, my programs, they get great results, and you will see that from the reviews that I get across all of the different platforms. The Business Accelerator program is a 6-month program. You need 3 hours a month for it, and anything outside of that will be doing the activities you would be doing anyway as an MD or CEO. So there's not loads of studying with this. It's practical, it's well paced, it's actionable, because you're busy, and I appreciate that. And I support you over those months to make those shifts quickly and effectively, so that you get your managers managing in a way that is manageable for you. And we work on the highest priorities, we get quick wins, and you see results after a couple of weeks. So I'm offering a limited number of calls. Like I said to you, some team audit calls today. On the call, we'll discuss how you can get the results you want from your team. We'll go through where you are now, where you want to be, and map out a plan to get you there. And then you can ask any questions you'd like to about the programme if you're interested in that. Now, I've only got a limited number of calls because I've only got a limited number of time, and actually I've only got one space in the programme right now anyway, because I don't take on loads and loads of clients. I take on a sensible number of people, so I can offer you really, really good personalised support. If you want to book one of these calls, scan the QR code, punch in the URL. If you don't find a time that suits, then just email me or DM me on LinkedIn, and we will try and find a time that works for both of us. So look, I hope that that's been helpful for you. And what I'll do now is take questions and answers. Take questions from you, take questions and answers. I'll answer them, you ask the question. So, right then, where are we? So who has got a question that you'd like to ask? Just type it into the chat if you do. Let me know you've got questions that you'd like to ask today about any part of the framework, the programme, anything else I can help with. Let's see where we are. Q&A only, here we go. Okay, don't see anything in there for a moment. Now, I know that sometimes a Q&A can take a minute to come through, so I'm going to hang on for a second and just see. Also, what I tend to find is that people wait and see what questions other people ask. So if you are sat there wondering something, then just drop it in. If you don't feel like asking that publicly, then just put it as a private question to me. I'm happy to answer that. There's a part where you can share with everybody or share with the host, so you could do that. Alternatively, if you have got questions and you'd like a more personal response and to talk about it more, then obviously then book a call in and we'll talk about that together. I shall give it just a second and see whether anybody wants to ask me anything, because that's what today is about. So I can see lots of those challenges with the team are resonating for you. They really are just so common. Just see them over and over and over again. Okay, it doesn't look like anybody's got anything to ask, although I can see that there are a lot of people still on. So I'll give it a second, as I say, and then we'll close down the call, and you can always message me with any questions. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that there possibly aren't any. So if there are, message me, email me, book a call. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming along today. I hope that it's been super useful for you, and you've got some insight and some actions that you can take away and start to implement in your business. So you're very welcome. Thank you. Right then, I'll speak to you, I'm sure, at some point soon. Take care. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. Right, take care. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.